Have you been struggling with coming over the top in your golf swing, maybe slicing the ball too much and you just can't figure it out? Well, I just may have the solution to your problems, and it may be a little easier than you think. Let's get to work. So in my 25 years, almost 25 years of teaching and coaching at this point, I have seen hundreds, if not thousands of players with over-the-top moves. And honestly, not all over-the-top moves are bad, and I'll explain that in a few minutes here. But a lot of them are. I mean, a lot of them create a lot of issues. A lot of them create a lot of extreme path issues where the club path gets way too outside, and then they have to manipulate the body, manipulate the face angle. They have to balance everything out to hit a functionally decent shot, and it's just not a reliable golf shot overall. Now, the over-the-top move is also a very visually obvious thing that happens. The club comes outside, the shaft gets more vertical, the club head gets outside the target line, arms go out. There's a lot of things that can be seen with the eyes, but a lot of times the thing that actually creates it has nothing to do with really what you're seeing, or can you even see it with your eyes? I have the benefit of having force plates and pressure mats to measure certain things. And a lot of times it's more of what the footwork is doing in the golf swing, whether it's set up or dynamic off of the golf ball, that's actually causing the over-the-top move. I just had a new student that left, and this is what kind of sprung up the idea of this video, because he was a perfect example of that. And I'm going to show you a little behind the scenes of before and after, and how we actually got to the point very quickly where instead of hitting big pulls, big misses left, big slices, he actually started hitting the ball much straighter, even with a little bit of a draw. Now again, the objective was not to hit a draw from the beginning. The objective was to get the miss patterns, the left, the right, the east, the west dispersion much tighter, and also make it much easier to control the club face intuitively. Club face is still the master of where the golf ball goes, and I have a bunch of videos that I'll be doing coming up, so please subscribe if you're not a subscriber yet, talking about the face angle, because ultimately the face angle really does control ultimately what the ball does or where the ball goes. But if you have an extreme club path due to an over-the-top move, it does make it more challenging, obviously, to control your dispersion, your left and right dispersion patterns overall. So let's dive a little bit deeper into his swing, and then I'm going to explain how we quickly made this change, and maybe it will help you. So let's dive briefly into a before and after look at the changes that we made and the effects it actually had on his ball flight, his distance, his club path, so on and so forth. And then I'm going to explain how I actually did this with him. So the one on the right, the video on the right, and the one thing I do have to say is this is a two-dimensional view. Down the bottom, I have a couple data points that I pulled up, club path, distance overall, obviously that's a net result of everything else. Club path is the thing that I am going to really isolate here. Now, at the end of the day, and I've said this many times before, club face is still that main determining factor after the strike is good, center face contact, low point control, and all that stuff is good. But if you have extreme path numbers, your club face is going to be affected by it because you're going to athletically correct and move in certain ways to hit functional golf shots. The better we get at tightening up the club path, and the club path does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 0 degrees, doesn't have to be from the inside, it can be slightly from the outside. You have some wiggle room to play with the club path, and ultimately once you get into that wiggle room zone, it is all about club face, taking into account that you are striking the ball solid. So the one on the right is one of the first swings that I grabbed. And setup overall is not bad visually. And this is where things get a little bit, I'm going to say, potentially confusing to players, because we do have to dive a little bit deeper than just the two-dimensional visual of this to establish the cause and effect and find the role of the main culprit in the over-the-top. So one on the right, again, decent looking setup. One on the left, that's the after, decent looking setup as well. if we take a look at how much he goes over plane. Now, what I mean by that is we have a starting line, two-dimensional starting line. Club arms go up a certain plane. They've kind of established this plane. And then he comes outside of that. So the shaft gets pretty vertical. The shaft gets more on his lead arm at this point. And then ultimately the club head tracks outside, left. He gets a lot of chicken wing. He gets a lot of early extension because of this. There's a lot of things that start to visually happen because of that. And the chicken wing, early extension, things of that as it relates to him is more of just an athletic compensation so he can functionally hit the ball halfway decent. Now, the reason why we're attacking this, his club path, and to be honest with you, this wasn't that terrible overall. He had a couple in the 10s, 11s as well from the outside across the golf ball, being a right-handed golfer. You can see this one was 5.7 degrees. Now, after I went over a couple things, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, I'm going to cut the camera over there, and I'm going to demonstrate to you. After we went over a couple things, you can see the significant difference in the change of directions. So he shallows the club out better. You know, everyone loves that term, shallowing the club out. The club gets shallowed out a little bit more. You can see the shaft right now is more on his trail arm. Now, if we just go back to the one on the left, look at the difference between those two. Now, here is the crazy thing about this. He not once tried to quote-unquote shallow the club out. He did not try to get that club laid off. Did not try to swing from the inside. This is all a net result of what his body is doing, and the club and the arms and everything else are reacting. Now, you'll notice something here. You know, as I pointed out, his club path was 5.7 degrees out to in. Notice what his club path is now. It's 2.2 into out. Now again, that wasn't the main objective. We're not trying to get him to be in a position to hit draws, yada yada, all that good stuff. What we're trying to do is minimize the amount of over the top, the amount of outside in that his club head travels through the golf ball, ultimately making it much easier for him to control the club face. That is my goal with this particular player. Get him much better at club face control. And in order to do that, his delivery into the golf ball has to be tighter than where it was. And like I said, I'm going to stress, it does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be 0 degrees. It does not have to be 2.2 degrees from the inside, 2.2 from the outside. There's a window. We just have to make sure that window is as small as possible. So I'm going to go over to the tee box over there, and I'm going to explain just how we did this. So the first thing I want to make super clear is that not all over-the-top moves come from what I'm going to talk about here. Everybody is different. Everybody's root cause is different. But again, almost 25 years of experience, hundreds if not thousands of golf swings I've seen with over-the-top moves. This is something that is actually a higher percentage cause and effect than one might think. Unfortunately, the over-the-top is a very visual move. So a lot of people just focus on the upper part of the body, the visual piece of it, and they don't realize that there is a potential ground force, potential balance, potential weight distribution piece of the puzzle that is really unseen. Now, I'm going to show you what I did with my student using my pressure mat, and this is exactly what we did in our session to establish his cause and effect and where this was coming from. But the first thing I definitely want to say is not all over-the-tops are bad. I work with a lot of plus handicaps that have these subtle over-the-top moves for one reason or the other, but ultimately their delivery through the golf ball, the geometry at impact, the face impact, the lie angle of the club, the arc depth, where they're striking it on the face, the low point control is not affected by this little visual, quote unquote, over the top move. Again, what is that over the top move that people see? It's the difference between where the club goes up and transition on the way down. Most people associate that with slicing the golf ball and coming outside. Now, this is where we go with this video, because my student, that's exactly what was happening, like I said before. He was a significant amount outside, which ultimately led to a wide dispersion from shot to shot. And our goal was just to get that into a more manageable piece. So where did his issues lie? Now, I'm going to show you a couple things with the pressure mat here, how it can relate to potentially your over-the-top move. The first thing I want to explain is, and I want to give you a picture. I'm going to paint a picture here for you. So you're walking on a tightrope. That's scary. You're walking on a slack line, you're walking on a balance beam, and you're trying to stay balanced. If you've ever walked on a balance beam or a slack line or a tightrope, let me know if you've done that before. That just gives me anxiety thinking about it. What the body is trying to do, though, it's always trying to keep your center of mass over that small line. So when the upper body goes one way, the lower body goes the other way to try to keep the center of mass in the same spot, basically so you can keep your balance and not fall over and hurt yourself. So it's the same thing that can happen in the golf swing as well. So if my lower half and my upper half are not in the right balance positions, whether it's an address position or if it's a dynamic position, the body's going to have to do something to compensate and to counterbalance in order to not fall over. Everybody that plays this game is an athlete, has athletic ability, some more so than others, but everybody has that natural intuitive ability to stay balanced. So I'm using, again, my student as an example. So the first thing I did with him was get him on a very simple pressure mat. This is not a force plate. This is only measuring pressures. This is measuring the pressure into the ground, where it is relative to my feet. As you can see on the screen right now, I'm on my toes, I'm on my heels, I'm pretty balanced, I'm more on my right foot, I'm more on my left foot. Now, where you are at address and dynamically can massively influence where the upper half and the lower half of the body go, just like I was just explaining with the counterbalancing on a tightrope. If I start too much on my toes, so if I start too much on my toes, so you can see on the screen, I'm too much on my toes. If I was to take this club back, we'll say relatively straight, I'm going to fall over. Now, what am I going to have to do to counteract that? If I'm too much on my toes, I'm probably going to have to wrap the club around my body so I don't fall over. That's a good example of counterbalancing. Now, if I'm on my toes and I wrap the club around, what's going to happen? I'm going to now have to get the club out from here, and I'm going to have to go back this way to counterbalance again. So that's one way, one potential way where an over the top can start to happen if you are too much on your toes. So you have to, at address, so you have to make sure you are as dynamically toe to heel balanced or statically toe to heel balanced as you can at address. Now I understand not everybody can get on a pressure mat or a force plate to see this stuff, but you can, once you start thinking about it, you'll start to understand and feel really what that means. Good exercise, get set up, get way on your toes, just to feel where you are when you're way on your toes. Get way on your heels to feel where you are when you're way on your heels. And then just find that medium ground. So that's a potential. Now, with my student that was just in here, that wasn't necessarily the issue. Yes, I did talk about it. I did make sure that we were, from a static address position standpoint, that we were much more toe to heel balanced, or we were conscious of it. Now, where he went wrong, as it pertains to what we're talking about, was more dynamic. So what I mean by that is, as soon as the club went back, that's when he started to go towards his toes. Now, what's going to end up happening, if I go towards my toes, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to throw the club out to push my lower body back. This is also going to affect a lot of other things in the golf swing, not just the over the top. Not going to get into those right now, but it is going to dramatically affect lateral pressure shifts, forces into the grounds, things like that. But ultimately, as a net result, the club is going to have to go out so he doesn't fall over. So how did we fix this? How did we fix this so quickly? Well, first of all, I showed him this on the pressure mat, and I showed him the cause and effect of it. He understood pretty quickly. And what I had him start to feel when he was taking the club back, I was getting him to feel more into the heel. So the right hip was working in. I'm trying to get him to recenter his pelvis. So I'm trying to get his pelvis as he goes back to recenter, which is putting the pressure on the ground as it pertains to the toe to heel, to that right heel. So as soon as he started to do that, he started to get to the top and he was more on his right heel. You can see on the screen right now, I'm more on my right heel. What is this going to do? It's going to enable me to naturally drop the club more back here. Why? Because there's no natural counterbalancing that has to happen at that point. Now, some players, it's rare, do that to the extreme, and what ends up happening is they end up getting stuck and getting what we call underneath and too far back inside. If you deal with that, let me know. I can do a completely separate video on that. But as soon as we started to do that, as soon as he started to work better off of the golf ball, working back into that heel as that hip worked into the top, everything naturally stayed back. And you saw in the video, that was a significant difference in his golf swing in a very short period of time. He went from here to here on the downswing. And like I said, he did not think about where the club was or try to put the club in any different position. It just naturally went there. This is why we have to look deeper sometimes into some of the issues that we have in our golf swing and not just use a two-dimensional view of what is going on up here. Because if he continued to work on his toes on the backswing, he's going to always fight that over the top move, and that's what a lot of people do. I see it every single day. So if this is something you struggle with, if you do come over the top, I want you to play around with this a little bit. Go to the range. Work on getting into your heel a little bit more on the backswing and feel that trail hip working in and feel that club staying back in the downswing. Another great exercise for that is simply take a golf ball, step on the golf ball, or put the golf ball underneath your toe on your back foot. If you're a righty, on your right foot, lefty on your left foot. And what you want to do here is right now you're feeling a certain amount of pressure into the ground on that golf ball. As that club goes back, I don't want you to push into the ground with that toe. I want you to simply maintain that same pressure on that trail heel right there and just allow yourself to swing through from that position. Great drill to start to establish where the pressure is going, where the weight is staying relative to your toe and heel. I hope this helps. Let me know if it does. Any questions, please reach out to me, let me know. I'm here to help. Subscribe for more. I got a lot more of this stuff and a lot more, I would say, different stuff coming as well to help your game.